Welcome to Around Town, everyone. We are here at the Henry Ford Museum with Kate Moreland, and she is the exhibits manager here at Henry Ford Museum. There is an amazing presentation and exhibit that has come to Henry Ford that I think everyone should see. But we're going to talk to Kate about the Four Freedoms and how it found its way here to the Henry Ford Museum. Welcome to Around Town, and tell us about this wonderful exhibit and its timely presence here at Henry Ford.
It is. Well, thank you so much for joining me here. I'm very excited to unveil this exhibit to our local audience. The Four Freedoms are concepts: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And those are ideals that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt put forward in the 1940s before we entered World War II. And more iconically, I think, they are paintings. And right behind us, you'll see posters of those paintings done by Norman Rockwell, the very famous illustrator. We came to have this exhibit through a relationship with the Norman Rockwell Museum, who was touring the exhibit throughout the country. And the exhibit contains about 300 pieces, paintings, illustrations, magazine covers.
Okay.
They're all related to the concept of the Four Freedoms, whether it's paintings from the Great Depression that came before that, or they're contemporary representations of what freedom means to us today. Because here at the Henry Ford, we believe that history is as important today as it was in the past. And so we want to bring those concepts forward into our present day and into the future.
I did a little bit of research about this. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt presented these Four Freedoms, but it fell on deaf ears. So in comes Norman Rockwell in the Saturday Evening Post.
Yeah.
So tell us about that and how that all connected and really created the public relations campaign, I guess, for his concept of the Four Freedoms.
Well, Norman Rockwell wanted to do something for his country, so it came out of a patriotic feeling of his. He was familiar with the Four Freedoms speech, as other artists were, and so there were many artists that wanted to take that on. In Rockwell's case, he was noted as an illustrator who had scenes from everyday life, and I think that's why so many people love Rockwell, is that these are very relatable scenes that have emotion in them. So he took scenes that came out of the life that was around him, out of American life, to give kind of an anchor to those ideals. And for a while he had to think about how does freedom of speech, for example, look? And so he settled on an image of a man at a town hall meeting giving an unpopular opinion. Everyone else around that was in that meeting disagreed with him, and yet they respected him enough to let him have his say. And eventually the decision did not go the way that he wanted it to go, but that's all part of freedom of speech. It's the ability to voice that opinion.
And express your opinion without really maybe changing minds, but at least we still have that freedom last time I checked, I hope. These four are really the basis for the rest of the exhibit, correct? So tell us about that and tell us what other exhibits are there, the artists, and how they were relatable to these sort of mainstays.
Right. The core of the exhibit is these four images. We have both the original oils. He worked in oil, and then that was turned into prints that could be used, like the ones behind us were used for war bonds, to sell war bonds. In addition to that, we have his later work from the 1960s. He became much more socially active at that point. And then we have some from 2017, 2018 of modern day artists or contemporary artists like Pops Peterson, for example, who created it's a photographic and a digital painting of freedom from fear, and yet it's translated into some of the racial conflicts that have happened over the past few years in America.
So in regards to the other artists, what other artists are here that have complemented this? Is it just Pops Peterson, or do we have other artists that are in display?
We have other artists as well. We have Daisy Rockwell, who is Norman Rockwell's granddaughter. Yep. So we have other ones. We have Marcia Hoffman. We have Deborah Samia. We have just we have 30 different pieces that are in that exhibit, and it covers everything from acrylic on canvas to mixed media and even some digital video pieces.
So how does the public come in, and what days is this exhibit going to be here?
It's going to be open from October 13th through January 13th of 2019. So we have it for a full 3 months. It covers the holiday season, which is normally a very busy time to visit museums with family in town and such. And we're open from 9:30 to 5 o'clock, 7 days a week. We're not open on Thanksgiving or Christmas, but the other days during that time period, we'd love to have anyone come out and experience this exhibit with us and think about what freedom means to them, and how do these concepts still apply to our lives today.
Kate, I want to ask you a question. Given the environment of our present day situation and the environment in our country in regards to the freedom from fear, or freedom of speech, was this something that was done in a timely basis, or was this something that was just traveling and just happened to come at a perfect time into our communities?
Well, we have been, we knew we were going to have this exhibit for quite some time, for a couple of years. So we do try to plan ahead for our traveling exhibit schedule in that way. But as for it being timely, I think that a lot of these concepts we've been dealing with for a long time in our country, and they come about in different ways, and I think that the contemporary artists are expressing their freedom of speech and making that very timely for us within the past 2 years or so, when most of those pieces come from.
So divine intervention on a timely basis. Kate, thank you so much for joining us
and
around town. Will you take us for a little bit of a walk?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Come join us. So what was the concept of this particular exhibit?
Well, many of the pieces in the Reimagining the Four Freedoms deal with limitations on freedom. And so each of these artists is responding in their own way with their own opinions about those limitations. So in this case, in talking about the Women's March, do women have equal freedoms with men today, and examining those sorts of gender-based freedoms.
Absolutely. And it says achieving our full selves by fully embracing each other. And that just makes a lot of sense. So that's a wonderful piece and very well put together. There's another piece here that really caught my eye, and it's this particular piece. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have the American flag in this Robin Phillips Pendleton piece, and Robin had worked with the military and illustrations and such. So this is talking just about freedoms in terms of our country and who has freedoms and who maybe feels that they do not have.
So Kate, these 4 plates actually depict the 4 freedoms, but of course the people in these look totally different than what we see in Norman Rockwell's. So why was there a lack of diversity in his paintings?
That's an important question to ask. The Saturday Evening Post, where Rockwell was submitting most of his work to be turned into prints, had a policy of only showing people of different races in minor positions. So an image where someone who's African American would not be able to be front and center in that image. So it was an unfortunate social issue of the time.
And
go ahead.
No, I was just thinking in regards to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's speech, he emphasized so drastically and emphatically that this was not just for the American people or for the United States, and just drastically emphasized it was more for the international global community, which in his own way was talking about diversity.
Yeah.
So why do you think that disconnect was there?
I think when we go back and look at history and policies and contradictions, history is full of those sorts of contradictions, and it's it was the policy of the magazine, it was the policy of the owners of the magazine at the time. And so it's hard to put words in their mouth, but it's very obvious to us today that that was
discrimination.
It was
racism,
absolutely
and things that we're realizing right now. We've come a long way,
right.
but we have so much more to do and so much more to work on. But these are the kinds of exhibits that make us think, that make us evaluate where we've been and where we are as a nation, with individuals who are human beings but maybe look a little different. But you know what? We're all in this together, and for me, this is what I call freedom. And I think this exhibit is phenomenal. I love the diversity that it has, and I can't wait to come and bring my family to look at this. And thank you so much for being so knowledgeable about what we have here, and for answering a really tough question. Thank you, Kate.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
And thank you for being with us at Around Town. And come to the Henry Ford, look at this exhibit, create conversations with your family, and especially with your kids, because now's the time. Have a good day.